Welcome to Chicago Noir. I'm your host, Darrious Hilmon. Each month, we proudly showcase and amplify the African American experience right here in the Windy City. This month, we'll spend time on three of my favorite things: music, fashion, and philanthropy. I cannot imagine a full and fulfilling existence without them. Later, we'll meet a man whose life is a testimony to triumph over certain tragedy, the executive director of the Julian Foundation, Scott McLellan. We'll also spend time with one of the jazz world's most vocal advocates, Jazz Institute of Chicago's CEO, Heather Ireland Robinson. But first, I sit in conversation and community with Chicago's First Lady of Fashion, Barbara Bates. The proprietor of Barbara Bates Designs, she has dressed some of Chicago and the world's biggest and brightest stars. But if you think that fame and celebrity has gone to Barbara's head, you'd be wrong. She is the epitome of an authentic, straight shooter who would literally give you the clothes off her back if you needed them. No matter the challenge, Barbara Bates is always dressed for success. Barbara Bates. You are one of those names, as we were sharing, I've been in Chicago about 16 years now. You are one of those names in the city, especially within our community, of someone who, have you been dressed by Barbara Bates? So to have this opportunity to talk with you personally and professionally really is a thrill. I've heard a story, is this correct, or is it, one of those urban legends we create for people like you? You were working in an office, minding your own black business, doing the work, but folks would constantly look at you and go, what are you wearing? What is that? How are you putting that together?
That is exactly how I started. So initially I started just doing it for myself. Of course, I wasn't an entrepreneur. I was just, I found out where to get certain things from. I didn't have any design background because I didn't go to school for it. And so I thought you could take simple things like a simple pair of pants or a simple skirt with just a zipper, but you could buy decadent fabric. So that was the thing that got me over. I want to get the most unusual fabric that I could get. That meant it was going to cost a little bit, but I got a friend who's going to make it for me for $10, and it's still going to have a wonderful look. So I started with, I can't go on Michigan Avenue to get all the stuff that I want to get, so I'm going to start doing stuff for me and using my friend who knows how to sew. And that's where it started, dressing myself.
Minding a gap for you that was missing for you.
Absolutely.
How did you get from creating to fill your own need to launching Bates Design? How and you as you just said, you aren't from the Fashion Academy, you are self-taught. So how did you get here, and what level of confidence did you have to tap into to take that risk?
So then I didn't know it, but as I look back now and I look back at it, people buy you first and then they buy your product. So I was always easy to get along with, always liked everybody, and I never put people down because they didn't look a certain way. I was just always the helper. And then the people coming by my desk was the confidence. The girls coming by saying, oh, I like what you have on. I didn't want to miss the opportunity of making money from it because I always had that spirit of wanting to make money. And so that's when I said, I could make one for you. I could have one made for you. And I started meeting the girls in the bathroom on the 15th and the 31st. And I took the tape measure, that's how I started. I started by the girls coming by my desk. I worked at First Chicago Bank, which is now Chase. And they would come by the desk, and I would go in the bathroom with them, and they were like, I want what you have on. So I'd go back to the store. They don't have that fabric anymore. Would you take something else? And I had something it was innate about knowing how to buy the right fabric and what the fabric could do. And that's how I initially started. A husband and wife couple. They would make the stuff up for me. I'd go back to work, meet the girls in the bathroom on the break time.
That was your design studio.
And that was my design studio. And it evolved on its own. No, I wasn't spending marketing money. I wasn't going out asking somebody. It was word of mouth, for real.
The power.
Word of mouth, yeah.
In 2009, your life changed. Talk about, share that experience, give us a bit more color and context, and also talk about how that experience and everything attached to it changed the way that you move through the world, your own life today.
So in 2009, 2009, my youngest son was convicted of a nonviolent, low-level drug offense. He was in Champaign going to school, making bad decisions, and he was facing a mandatory minimum sentence of life for a nonviolent offense. It was my first time hearing about a mandatory minimum sentence. I was like, what was he doing? Selling bucket loads of cocaine crack? I had no idea. And when I saw what it was, my whole thing was, yeah, he was doing wrong. He was doing something. He should be punished. But this punishment that they're talking about doesn't have anything to do with what he did. So is that what's going on in the United States right now? So I wanted to become involved in mandatory minimum sentence. Why are people going away? And when he finally got sentenced, it was a year of going back and forth to court. It was horrifying. It was the worst thing ever, just going back. It was horrible. And he got slapped with a 19-year prison sentence to go to a federal institution. He went in on a Thursday. That Saturday, I'm laying in my bed just crying because it's still like, I'm gonna be 100 when he comes home. And I'm like rocking like this, and I feel a lump in my breast. I go to the doctor on June 1st. My son left on the 29th of May. On June 1st, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. But I never said why me. And what I did was I put it on, and at that time, for me, Facebook was a big thing. I put it on Facebook, and I got like prayers because I couldn't pray for myself because I didn't really know what to say. It was like too much had happened. And just, it was the prayers of so many people. That's what got me through it. I believe that, I know that it's the truth. There was just so many people like reached out to tell me that they were praying for me, and that's what got me through that period. My son came home early. As a matter of fact, he's called me 15 times today. He's getting on my last nerve. But my son came home early, and just like Job, I was able to figure the story out. So with Job, he lost his children, and he lost all of his cattle and his herd and his home. And I was like, who would want to, lose their kids? Like, that's a horrible story. But in the end, when my son came home, he was a new son. So I got a new son. I had a new body, I had new hair, I had new skin, I had a new way of thinking. And everything was restored to me. And that's when my friend explained the story of Job, is that, he always just believed. He had unwavering faith. And no matter how much evil the devil threw his way, God just kept saying that he was a good servant. And I just want to believe that that's what I was, because after breast cancer is when I decided to advocate and raise money. And I don't know where that came from. I'm not smart enough to sit and figure any of this stuff out. I want you to know that. That's the God honest truth. But I went through it, and by going through it, I knew that there was something that I had to do.
And from that, the Barber-based
I started
Foundation,
raising,
and you were doing work. I'm gonna tell you, I didn't know any of this, but walking by this building almost every day for the past 5 years, it all adds up. It all adds up.
Every community has a story, a pulse, a voice waiting to be heard. At CAN TV, we bring these stories to life, from the heart of Chicago to your living room. Join us in supporting hyper-local television. Your backing helps us cover what matters directly in our communities, unfiltered and upfront. Help tell the important stories of our communities. Become a program underwriter today.
Chicago's jazz legacy is rich, vibrant, deeply woven into the city's cultural fabric. And at the helm of preserving and advancing that legacy is Heather Ireland Robinson, CEO of the Jazz Institute of Chicago. Under her leadership, the organization continues to nurture emerging artists, create spaces for jazz education, and ensure that this uniquely American art form remains a vital part of Chicago's music scene. Heather is a walking, talking, hard-working advocate who knows how very important it is to let the music play. So let's begin at the beginning. Tell me about the man and woman who raised you.
Asking that question first, you're trying to get
right
emotions going. My parents, I think, were the two greatest people on earth. My mother was, they're not. Oh. So it's even more like, you, Darrious, you're just gonna jump right in. But, my brother and I are so clear about the fact that we had who we had when we did, and that's exactly what we needed, and we wouldn't have it any other way. I feel like my parents came to earth, or before they were born, they were like, you know what, we're gonna have these 2 kids, but we only gonna be here for this long. And God was like, okay, we're gonna swap that out, if that makes any sense. Like, we got everything we needed. We were grown when they passed away.
They were clear about their mission.
They were clear. So to that end, my father was a pharmacist. He had a pharmacy on 71st and Jeffrey for years, and he was the pharmacist of the people, Ireland's pharmacy. My mother was a kindergarten and first grade teacher. So as I grew up, like even as an adult, looking back on my career, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a community person because of that. You know, we walk through the neighborhood and people, Miss Ireland.
It's in your DNA.
It's in my DNA. Yeah. And it's something that I'm very proud to do. It's like art and everything is very important, but the fact that I'm making it possible for everybody to do. Whether that's kids, I had a children's theater company for a little while, making sure that they have performances, art, experiences. I mean, we grew up with crayons in the house. We grew up going to see plays and hearing music. We grew up doing plays in the living room. And everybody had to watch. And my parents were like, yep, y'all gotta watch, you know what I mean? And so we had that growing up. And I know everybody doesn't get that. And it made me, whether I went into the arts or not, it made me a certain kind of person.
What brought you to Jazz Institute 7 years ago?
Yes.
And what keeps you here today?
So what brought me here was just, I think, a natural path of leadership. I had been executive director of the Southside Community Arts Center. I had been executive director of the Beverly Arts Center. And I was home with my baby. Like, I had a baby, our youngest, my little girl, and it was just about time to go back. Okay. She was looking at me like, you're still here? And I was like,
she's like, thanks
you're
for
still,
all of this.
She's like, I think I have what I need from you. It was just a moment, and moms will, I mean, some moms are like, I don't want to go, but we were both like, it's time, I think it's time. And on Facebook, my predecessor, so I worked for the Jazz Institute over 20 years ago in one of my first nonprofit jobs.
My goodness.
And so my predecessor had been here for over 20 years in the role as director. She put on Facebook, I'm retiring. And I'll never forget, there was a picture of her holding flowers. And I said, this is it. Like, you just know. My work life has been very charmed like that. Like, I go, I think I'm ready, and something will,
the universe goes,
it'll be so clear. Like, not that I've never applied for a job, but for the most part, it's been like, hey, and so I remember sitting on the couch and I was like, I called my husband, Claude, I think this is the thing. And through all the interviews and everything, here I am. But because of jazz music, because of my love for the origins of the music and the actual music, this felt like everything has prepared me for this. And that's what keeps me here, keeping the stories alive, making sure that jazz continues to live, the staff that's here, the musicians. I love all the artists, forms, dance, visual art. There's something about musicians that's just, I think because I don't do it, that I'm in awe. Like, dance I've kind of done, you know, theater obviously, but there's something about musicians that just blows me away, right? And because unlike visual arts, which I love y'all too, my visual artists, don't get me wrong, you gotta do it together. You have to do music, especially jazz. You gotta listen in a way that you don't. You're not just,
be connected on
you
the
have to be,
level
and I
that
think
is,
that makes me just in awe, but it's why I love jazz music. Yeah, so that's what keeps me here, making sure that our next generation gets it, not just for them, but for the audiences and for the music itself.
What is, in your opinion, the current state of jazz?
So because jazz, so let's talk about the origins of jazz, right? Sounds of Africa, some European influences obviously, but that root in Black history in New Orleans and across the South. Moved up here to Chicago, and the sound changed. You had Louis Armstrong, you had Jelly Roll Morton and those kinds of folks. So that's a history that we have to keep. But like a museum, we can keep it not far away, but keep it there. It's evolving all the time. It's a living art form. You have current musicians like Kamasi Washington, Robert Glasper that are saying, hey, let's take the form of jazz where we're improvising, we're adding soul, we're adding other rhythms, and that's jazz as well. Marquise Hill, Junius, I could go on, Micaiah. You're saying, this is what I believe about. This is the voice I want to add to take into the future. We're not going to forget the past because of that frame, but there's ways that it is evolving and can evolve in a way that I don't think we've seen in the last few decades. So there's new stuff happening. It's hard to define because it's coming from the person. Exactly. Exactly.
Talk about the work that this venerable organization, Jazz Institute of Chicago, is doing to make sure that jazz remains a part of the cultural landscape.
Yes, that's beautifully stated. So we've been around since 1969, first of all. So I will not take you back through every year, but right now what we're doing is a robust slate of education programs that we call Jazz Links. So that's pouring into the youth. We don't teach the technical skill. It's more about your experiences and your mentorship, residency programs in the schools, a jam session at the Jazz Showcase. Ages 9 to 19 can come and play with top musicians. So to me, that's a mentorship, right? You're learning the tech at school. You're learning the tech in other places. But here's where you learn to really shed and get your chops from the top musicians led by Gerard Harris.
You learn the love of it.
You learn the love of it. And you're in real time. You're on stage with 50, on a good day, 20 people watching you on a historic stage. So that's part of it, is like teaching you that part of it, but helping you to find your voice as well. We talk about access. We have free jazz concerts in the parks, 25-year partnership with the Chicago Park District. So it's building audiences while also investing in you so that they learn to play, but they're also learning how to create bands. We have a student council of jazz musicians from all over the city, high school students that can connect with each other, right? Because I love this music, but I might not find all of my friends at school that are doing the same thing. They meet here, they get to go to the CSO for jazz shows, they get to meet musicians, they get to be led by John Foster, who came up through our programs, teaching them about touring, teaching them about how to create a band. That's their final project. They actually make a band. So it's all of these things that it takes to be a musician while letting them develop their voices as well. And the space that we're sitting in, this used to be our offices. Now it's a performance space where we have a program called Front Row where musicians can play to a small audience. We got a gorgeous view of the city. We're keeping this view to ourselves.
Baby, yeah. What is your superpower?
I'm gonna say joy. I'm gonna say I have always found a way to be happy about things, whatever it is. There's a lot going on at work right now, but oh my God, I get to sit with Darrious later. I get to look at I'm here for the music. Let's go, y'all. You know what I mean? So, and I love connecting with people, you know, like I talked about working with the musicians. So I think my ability to connect with people on any level, I think that's a superpower as well. And I love it. I love talking. I'm having a ball here. I love finding out the thing behind the thing of a person. Like, okay, you're a musician, but what'd you eat for breakfast? And that's part of why we created this space, so that it wouldn't just be, okay, you're here, play, see, we gotta go, we gotta clear out. Let's have a joke together. I've gotten to know people so well. This space is about building community among us all, on both sides of the footlights, as I like to say.
I love that.
So I think those would be my two superpowers.
CAN TV is the lens through which Chicago's stories are told, harnessing the unifying power of community television. With CAN TV On Demand, immerse yourself in the richness of our city through exclusive stories and programs tailored just for you, connecting you to the heartbeats of our streets, the voices of our people, and the spirit that makes Chicago unique. Discover the strength of your community on CAN TV On Demand.
Philanthropy has the power to transform communities, and at the Julian Grace Foundation, that mission is being led with vision and purpose by Executive Director Scott McLellan. Under Scott's leadership, the foundation is driving meaningful change, supporting innovative solutions in education, social justice, and community development. But the backstory of the man behind the mission helps to center his deep-rooted passion for improving the lives of others. Adopted in just 4 months, Scott is the absolute definition of triumph over tragedy. Scott McLellan, how are you, my friend?
I am well, thank you, Darrious.
It is a pleasure to sit with you. I think the first time that we sat in conversation, something was happening in your life. So let's begin at the beginning. Tell our viewers first about the man and woman who raised you, where you spent your formative years, and the relationship with them. And then share what you can about the man and woman who created you and the current state of that relationship.
Gotcha. All right. I was adopted at 4 months old into a white family. And so the parents that adopted me did not necessarily have the tools or equipped to raise, as you said, a black child. And this is
male child.
In 1971. Yeah. Mr. and Mrs. McLellan, they had 3 of their own kids, biological. I have an older brother, and then a younger sister who has passed away, and then a younger brother. And the way I was treated was different than my siblings. I was disciplined differently. I was loved differently, if you will. And even through the early years, what we used to think, in our generation, like what was discipline, where you get spanked or whatever, but it was way more than that. And so I went through a rough childhood into high school where my parents got divorced and I had to go live with my dad. And I was in Rhode Island and then moved to Pennsylvania, Allentown, Pennsylvania, with my dad and his boyfriend. And at the time, he was in and out of the hospital, mental hospital, because he was bipolar. And so everything he was dealing with, was taken out on me. And so finally, by my 11th grade year, I had run away from home because of what was going on in the household. And I was on the streets. I remember sleeping underneath a park bench in a cemetery, the Boys and Girls Clubs, which subsequently had played a major role in my life. I say all that to say, 4 months old, being adopted, probably a month and a half ago, a biological cousin had reached out to me through 23andMe.
A month and a half ago.
A month and a half ago, January. Gloria Green. And she reached out to me and said, my mom and your grandmother are sisters. Please call me. I have so much to tell you, so much to share. And it turns out the reason I was given up for adoption was my mother was in the Navy. And I was born in the Newport Naval Hospital.
Wow.
My mother was in the Navy. My father was in the Navy. They were married. My father was a fighter pilot in Vietnam War and was shot down.
My goodness.
So when he was shot down, she was pregnant with me. And in the earlier days of the military, you couldn't be pregnant, you couldn't be a parent in the military. And so she had to give me up for adoption. She graduated from Miles College in Alabama.
Wow.
Went into the military. When she left the military, she went to Brown University to get her doctorate in journalism. At some point in time, moved back to Alabama, where she ran CBS 42 in Birmingham, Alabama. So she was the station director. I think I shared a picture with you. She's on the cover of the 1978 Ebony magazine, the August edition of Ebony magazine, as one of the top up-and-coming black professionals. And there's a picture of her right there with a microphone, with her beautiful smile. And so, when you think about it, it's not the same story that I've known for 53 years.
Go back to the people, the men and women you spent your formative years with. I'm going to step there for a second. How are you okay today, having experienced what is no other way to describe but horrific trauma?
So if you would ask me how have I healed and moved on, I haven't. It still sits there. It still hurts. I feel like I need it to be there because it fuels the work that I do right now. I look at it like this. Yeah, it sucked. Yeah, it was horrific. There were days where I didn't know if I was going to live to be here the next day. Yeah. There were days that I was scared. But all of those experiences has put me in the position to where I can help other people. So I went into work for Boys and Girls Clubs because I didn't want other kids to go through what I went through. And I remember how the Boys and Girls Club saved my life.
Yeah. Literally.
And having done that for 18 years and then working youth development, that was therapy.
Okay. You are one of, and this isn't even an overstatement, the few almost outlier-esque number of black men who run a philanthropic foundation. Would that be fair to say?
That would be fair to say.
Yeah. So how did you get from the side I'm on, more please, to the side that you're on, and then tell me why it matters that someone who looks like you, what's different about having a Scott McLellan on that side as well, in that seat?
I don't know if they intentionally said, oh, let's put a black man in this seat. I think they said, let's put Scott in this seat. And we like Scott, we like what he's about, we like what he does, and we're hoping that he moves our mission forward. They've never said anything to me about, hey, we're great, we put a black man in this seat. Not once has ever come up. I'm just fortunate to be in this space. But because I'm in this space, and I recognize that people have sacrificed, black people have sacrificed over the years, so we can drink out of the same water fountain, we can eat at the same table. It means that I have a responsibility to pave the way for the next people that look like us to sit at these seats. And I've also gotten to the point where I recognize that it may not happen all in my lifetime, and I've got to be okay with that.
That's something. That's
and
a
I am.
Powerful statement. Yeah. So, what are you in this moment proudest of professionally?
I think first that I'm actually sitting in this seat. Like if I look back at April 26, 1971, and think about today, February 28th, I'm like, man, I actually got here. And I never thought I was gonna be here, never. And I think back of the things that, like how I got into college, how I was on the basketball, like how I got a scholarship and played, how I got my first job, how I met my wife, how I am sitting in this seat today having this interview. I think I'm proud mostly because of resiliency. So professionally, I'm proud of the work that I've done that has made an imprint in this world. Whether it's been working in Boys and Girls Clubs, social worker, Heart of the City, and now Julian Grace Foundation. I am proud of being able to be a part of something that's way bigger than me. And if I can change just a little bit of what I've gone through, what other black people have gone through, what other people in this world are going through, if I can be a part of that, then that, to me, is those proud moments. Those are the wins.
My sincere thanks to Barbara Bates, Heather Ireland Robinson, and Scott McLellan for sharing their incredible stories with you, our viewers. And thanks to you for watching Chicago Noir from your sofa or your favorite park bench. We'll be back next month with 3 more Chicago-centered stories that amplify the rich and varied African-American experience here in the city of big shoulders. Until then, take good care of you and each other.